think she's just on her way. Okay. So we went over the info that you sent in, which is great. So I think we have a kind of a good idea of what's going on here. So we always like to start with, like, what do you guys want help with? Obviously, we've heard some of the things from the info that you sent in, but, like, you know, we want to hear from you. What's the most important? Usually start with, like, the most important things and then just kind of work our way down and go from there.
My most important one is being able to walk them.
Okay.
Recently, they took me out last week, the week before, and it was awful, but now I'm kind of scared to walk them.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the walking.
Okay.
And then last weekend, they took out my mom. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so my biggest thing is just I need them to listen because they're so strong that I'm just not strong enough to control them.
Okay. Alrighty.
They're jumping. If we're going from worst to least, I mean, it's hard. Walking's my worst one, but they suck at almost everything.
Okay.
So, yeah, they jump on people.
Okay.
Each other. Otis is really bad to jump into the door, like when you get home. He jumps onto the front door and, like, it's like thumps, like you can hear it. I take it open.
Okay.
They're barking, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They bark at cars, they talk all the house.
They bark at nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Okay.
Oh, we're camera surfers. Not all the time, but yeah. And because of the camera surfing, we have a lot of distraction. Like toilet paper tubes, whole rolls, like paper towel, like plastic Tupperware. If there's food, he'll take it. We lost almost an entire tray of cabbage rolls one day.
Mm-hmm.
The greeting people when people come to the door, it's like tenfold. All of those other things that we just said, like it's like they're just so. We have a split entry home, and we have to separate the dog, and then people have to come up the stairs and then like put their back against our deep freeze, so the dog won't take them out down the stairs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
I think that those are the biggest. Oh, recall. They're so bad. We currently have to keep them on leads in the yard anytime they're out there because we're from Hamilton Plains and we have a wooded area around us, so they'll go off into the woods and then not come back. So I found them in the street, I found them across
boundary training.
Yard,
boundary training.
in like a bog next door. We have to physically go hunting for them.
Okay.
And we'd like to be able to keep them off lead in the yard.
Yeah.
But that's just not feasible because they don't go back.
Yeah, you can't trust them.
No.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, that's fucking good.
Okay, cool.
Cover all your bases.
All right. So we have kind of our major thing is you guys want to be able to take them for walks and have it be more harmonious. And then we have other issues that you'd like to have addressed as well too. So what we'll do is we'll give you kind of an idea and a quote on both different options. So just leash walking, and then if you want to do leash walking and everything else. So you have a couple different ways that you can go depending on how far you want to take things and how much time and money you want to invest and stuff like that. We typically kind of move into just chatting about kind of a little bit about how we work, and then we can go from there. So we're balance trainers, and what a balance trainer is, all that means is we're using positive motivations and negative motivations at the same time. So using positive motivations would be anything like food, toys, praise, treats, anything the dogs are desiring we use those to increase the likelihood that our dogs are going to do something that we want them to do, right? So everybody that comes in here has already done this to some degree, right? You guys have given them treats for, coming from the living room into the kitchen or stopping at a stop sign and sitting nicely and things like that. And again, using those positive motivations, that will typically increase the likelihood that you get a behavior that you want. And a lot of times it will, I don't care, you can do it, don't worry about that. But typically it will also increase the speed at which the dog does it. Now I would say there's a large inherent problem with using positive, is that if we only use positive, there's going to be some times and places where they're not going to do what you want them to do, right? So I'm sure that you can imagine last weekend or whatever, a couple weeks ago when you were walking them and that little dog walked by, how are you supposed to control them with treats if they're more focused on the dog than they are on the treats? Plus, that also means that you have to try to hold 2 leashes with one hand, because now you're trying to use one hand to do the treats at the same time. So it's using positive as a means to an end is typically pretty limiting, right? So what we would have to do is use a little bit of negative to be able to come in to do the opposite, to kind of counteract what the positive does well. What the positive does not do well is it does not get us the behavior that we want consistently in highly distractive environments, right? So negative just means using something that the dog deems to be uncomfortable in order to decrease the likelihood that they do something, they decrease the likelihood of doing something we don't want them to be doing. So the positive increases good behaviors and the negative decreases bad behaviors, right? And so a balance trainer is just going to use a combination of both, where they're going to say, okay, if you do a good thing, we'll give you something good. When you do something we don't want you to do, we'll make it uncomfortable for you. And then when you start doing the good behavior again, we'll start giving you the good things again. So that's really where the balance comes in. And every dog needs a different kind of, let's say, level of positive and negative. Like some dogs need a lot more positive because they're kind of lacking in confidence. Other dogs need a little bit more negative because they're just really stubborn or they're really pushy or whatever the case would be, right? But the key is that you really need to do something that they're going to understand, like, oh, I can't get away with this anymore. That's really kind of the big thing, right? Because there's a certain element of they've developed these behavioral patterns. They're working off of each other, so they're like making each other worse. Like, oh, he's doing this, so I got to do this. And there's that constant push and pull of like, this person's doing this, and this dog's doing this, and whatever, right? And so just having one dog can be difficult as it can be difficult. Having 2 dogs is difficult. Having 3 dogs is even more difficult, and so on and so forth, right? So they're definitely very trainable. We can do a little bit of training with them today, so you guys can kind of see how things work. But really, what it comes down to is like, you just got to tip the scales. Like, there's to them, the negative consequences that you're using aren't really making enough sense for them right now, right? So whatever you're doing to try to make things uncomfortable, it's not really effective. So some people come in and they do stuff like, they tell the dog no, or we had a client yesterday who would like tap their dog on the nose or whatever, right? Or like the dog gets into a fight at the park, so they take the dog home and they put him in a crate for a half an hour. But I would say that when you're using any kind of negative motivation, or let's call it correction, you not only want it to stop the behavior in the moment, you also want it to decrease the likelihood of happening in the future, so that you don't have to be constantly on the dogs all the time saying, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Because there's nothing more, there's nothing more annoying than constantly having to annoy your dogs, and just don't do that, right? So we got to figure out kind of a system where you guys can get a little bit of leverage over the situation. And we help literally thousands of clients in Nova Scotia do that over the years. So, that won't be a problem for us. It's definitely more difficult to train 2 dogs as opposed to 1, but, we've got lots of clients that have 2, 3, 4 dogs, so we can definitely do that. So there's two major tools that we often use for working with situations like this where we have multiple dogs, different problems and stuff like that. We'll go through those with you today so that you guys can decide how you guys want to move forward. Hey, big guy. All right. Okay. So, the first one here is called a prong collar. We don't use these with all of our clients' dogs, but they can be beneficial with in some situations. So a prong collar is essentially designed to mimic the bite of a mother dog. Now these things here, they call them prongs or links, but basically what they do is they make it uncomfortable when a dog pulls or if you pull on the leash, right? So it's self-correcting because if they pull, it's uncomfortable, but if you correct as well, that can be uncomfortable too. So these can be beneficial. We use them a lot for dogs with leash reactivity, barking at dogs, pulling, lunging at cars, stuff like that. We use them for a lot of situations like that. But mainly where we like to use them is clients who have more than one dog. The reason for it is because when we have a client who has one dog, we almost exclusively use the e-collar, and we use that for on-leash and off-leash and any behavior problems that we have. The problem with that is when you're going for a walk with two dogs, you've got a big problem there, right? You've got two dogs, you've got two leashes, and most of our clients like to walk one dog on the left and one dog on the right? And now you've got this remote, which is obviously more difficult. If you do prong collar, it's usually easier because now you just have two leashes, right? So it's usually a lot easier for clients who have multiple dogs as opposed to trying to do it with e-collar. Now you can do it with e-collar, don't get me wrong, but it's typically a lot easier, especially in the winter time when there's, it's cold out and you've got your gloves on and stuff trying to do the remote. It's kind of a pain in the ass. And so it can be a little bit more difficult. There's another thing that prong collars kind of have as an edge on the e-collar, on the e-collar, is that the prong collar is also, it's twofold. It's self-correcting, and we can also use it to correct, which just means with the e-collar, you have to press the button if the dog does something that you don't want them to be doing, like pulling or barking or whatever, right? And so if you miss something because you're, looking at something else and then boom, a squirrel comes out of nowhere, they at sometimes can learn, if you're not super consistent, that they can get away with that pulling, right? Which is not ideal. This is a little bit better in the sense that they're going to learn basically that if they pull on the leash, there's a consequence, okay? So it's not only that it's self-correcting, but at the same time, Amy's just coming in.
Sorry about that. Stop. This is
Just bring a chair over here. Okay, so we're just talking a little bit about the prong collar. Why don't you give him a treat? That'll probably calm him down a bit. See, she's not so bad. So the prong collar is good where if you weren't expecting Amy to come in and you've got him on a prong collar, he's going to hit the end of it and go, whoa, maybe I should think twice about that, right? So that's the nice thing is that it's self-correcting, but also you can use it to proactively say, okay, I see a dog coming, don't even think about it. So it's twofold, which is nice, where e-collar is not self-correcting, you have to do it every time, right? So it just makes it a little bit more intricate if you want to do it with e-collar. So again, just to kind of bring that together, usually with two dogs, it's just a lot easier to do it like that. Like for example, I have 2 kids now and I have 3 dogs. And when my wife told me that she was pregnant with our first, one of the first things that I did was I said, okay, my dogs are great on leash, but we've got some really deep ditches that, you've gone for a ride, it's not fun, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to start preparing the dogs so that, my wife, we'll take the dogs out for, she doesn't do too much, I do most of the dog stuff, but, she wants to be able to take the, the dogs out, 3 dogs at the same time, go for a walk with the stroller, all that kind of stuff. And so I just went back to the prong collar for a little while, made sure that they were just like really cleaned up, and then ultimately kind of got away from it, which is something that you can do if your technique is really, really good. Most of our clients end up using prong collars over the long term, to be completely honest, right? It's something that if you know how to get off of it, you can definitely get off of it, but most of our clients, it's just easier, slap it on, we go for a walk, we feel more in control, and so it tends to be pretty effective for that. So this is something that you could do if you wanted to do only the leash walking. It's also something that you could do if you wanted to do the leash walking and all of the other stuff. We would just combine it and say, okay, this we would use for walking, and then if you want to cover, barking at the door and off-leash training and different things like that, we would use the e-collar more specifically for some of that other stuff where they're not on a leash right next to you all the time, right? So again, this could be a really good tool for a couple things. We could do a little bit of training with them today so you can see how it works if you want. So there's another tool that we often use called an e-collar, which is just short for electric collar. And these are available in 2, 3, 4 dog modes depending on how many dogs people have. We usually just stock the 1 dog models, but we can always, just grab an extra receiver, swap it in, make it real easy for you. Which is a nice thing to using these e-collars. But basically what an e-collar does is it can be used as a method of communication and a method of correction. So all that means is there's 3 different modes on the e-collars that we use. Basically there's a tone, so it sounds like this. And the tone is basically something that we just use to say, hey, I want you to come back to me. So wherever you are, I want you to look around to find me, and I want you to come back, okay? I always say that about 5% of disobedience is because a dog didn't hear or didn't understand the command. Now, we're going to teach them to understand the commands, and usually it's not a lack of understanding, it's just a lack of wanting to do it, right? So we don't have to worry about that, and we don't have to worry about the dog hearing it because the noise comes from the collar, and the collar is always right next to their ears, so we don't have to worry about them understanding or hearing any kind of a command. So if they're out in the yard and you hit the tone, which obviously if you hit the tone on one dog, it doesn't do both dogs, it just does one dog. We usually, with multiple dogs, we'll usually give the dogs, we'll say their name first, right? So it might be like Otis, come, beep, and then we expect him to come to us. Good boy, paying attention. There's also the correction feature, which I'll show you guys, and you guys can feel the e-collar in your hand and all that kind of stuff in a minute. So remember we said about 5% of the time a dog is disobedient because they didn't hear or understand the command. I would say about 95% of the time it's because the dog heard the command and didn't give a shit about the command, right? I'd rather run after this squirrel, I'd rather pull you on the leash, I'd rather so on and so forth, right? And so it's not that the dog doesn't understand or doesn't hear it, it's that the dog understood it and was like, what are you going to do about it, right? So that's where e-collars are really effective, is because we can use them in some applications on leash, but we can also use them in off-leash contexts. So one of the things that we would definitely want to do with them is we would want to do something called boundary training, and boundary training just means, if you guys have ever, I'm sure you've either seen or heard of something like an invisible fence. Basically, the dogs just wear the collars and then they understand I'm not allowed to go past this line or else it gets uncomfortable. So we can actually do that, excuse me, with e-collars, and we do that with a lot of our clients' dogs. And that's really good because, like you said earlier, it'd be nice if you could just take them out in the yard and then they're not going to take off, and end up in somebody else's backyard or whatever the case is. So you can enjoy them more, they can get some more exercise, they can have a little bit more freedom, but at the same time, they will be more responsive, which obviously we want, right? So the correction that we have on the e-collar is adjustable within 100 levels, which basically means it goes from 0 to 100, and depending on what level you have, it will give that amount of intensity. Some dogs are really sensitive to the stimulation. Some dogs are kind of in the middle. Some dogs are a little bit higher, depending on kind of where they land. I find with Burmese mountain dogs, they tend to be pretty high for the most part. They tend to have really kind of high pain thresholds typically. Not always, but for the most part, they tend to have pretty high pain thresholds. But the key is, regardless of where the dog is at, we want to make sure that we can get their attention even if they're really sensitive. We've got 100 levels, right? So if they feel level 5, we could just maybe go up a few levels and get the dog's attention, and we don't have to go up that high. What we typically see is most dogs, when they start feeling it, they're going through basic training, they probably, most dogs feel it at a pretty low level. Where things are going to change is when there's a really big distraction, right? So when somebody comes to your house, that level 5 is going to do absolutely nothing, right? So I always say that, like, context will dictate how your dog feels and how kind of, like, let's say their pain threshold changes. So let's say tonight you go to sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're walking to the bathroom and you stub your toe, it's going to hurt a lot, right? Let's say tomorrow night you wake up, you hear somebody banging on your door, threatening to kill your family, you wake up, you stub your toe, you probably won't even feel it. So with dogs, it's usually the same thing. It's just a matter of how much do they have to go up in order to get their attention, and every context is going to need kind of a different level, if that makes sense, right? Because, you know, for a small distraction, you might not need to go up all that much, whereas a larger one, you might have to have a bit more of a threshold there, right? So we typically, there's 3 modes. There's also a vibrate mode, which we don't typically use because we've found over the years that some dogs can get kind of scared of it, which doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like a cell phone vibrating in your pocket, but I've seen 200-pound mastiffs like jump 6 feet like they're dying. So we don't typically use it just because some dogs can be really sensitive to it, which again, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. But, you know, if the dog is going to be that sensitive to it, we try not to use it. The tone typically is, you know, they're just fine with it. We pair it with food. We make it fun. And it's just like, oh, cool, tone. I come back, I get food. This is great. And then we start blending in the correction to say, okay, well, for example, you're coming back, you're getting food, all this kind of stuff. And then maybe we add a distraction and the dog goes, oh, I don't want to come anymore because I'd rather focus on this dog or this distraction or whatever, right? And then basically what we do from there is we can say, okay, well, if you want to ignore me now, then we can make it a little bit uncomfortable until you start giving me attention again, right? So that's basically all that balance training, really is. So we always like everybody to feel the e-collar in their hands so that they can have kind of an understanding of what it feels like. So if you want to try it, it's just put like a tiny bit of pressure on it in your palm. You can put it on your arm, your leg, your neck, your hand, wherever you want. Most people just do the hand. And basically what I'll do is I'll start you out at level 1, and then I'll go to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 until you tell me you start to feel it. Once you start to feel it, it feels like a little, sometimes people say it's like a little pinch or a little tingle, you know what I mean? It's not like a big shock or anything because I'm going to start you real low. It's not going to feel very much. And then what I want to do is, let's say you feel level 10, I'm going to say, okay, now I want to start going up a little up. What I'm really looking for is what level of sensitivity do you have to each individual level? Because some people might feel level 10, but by the time they get to 13, 14, it might be a little bit too intense. Some people could feel a 10 and they can go up to 30, 40 before it becomes too intense, right? And so some people are really sensitive to each incremental level. And of course, some dogs are that way too, right? So usually we'll want to do a little bit of training with the dogs to get kind of a sense for where they're going to land and all that kind of stuff. But if the dog is a little bit more sensitive to each incremental level, we want to know that usually going in so that we can take a little bit more time just to make sure that we're not going to go up a couple levels too high or anything like that, right? But it is nice where we have 100 levels, we can kind of tune it in. I always say it's like, you know, on those old school radios when we were young or whatever and our parents are trying to find the station or whatever, It's kind of like that, right? We just got to find the right level and it just clicks where the dog's like, okay, got it. I'm not supposed to be doing that. I think what we'll do today is we'll probably do prong collar with Otis. And the reason for that is, one, I want you to see a little bit about the prong collar, but he's got really thick fur and we're probably not going to get a good connection on him unless you guys really rake out that neck. We'll talk about that in a few minutes about trying to get through some of the undercoat. And then maybe with, what's her name again? Aggie? Aggie, yeah. With Aggie, we'll probably do e-collar just because it won't be such a, it won't be so difficult to get a connection on her, and we can do a little bit with her and kind of see how things go. So I'll bring the e-collar over. So who wants to go first? All right, Josh, you're up. So just put it in your hand, just a tiny bit of pressure is all you need. And what I'll do is I'll search out at level 1. You tell me when you start to feel it, okay? And everybody's different here. Some people.
Feeling it now.
You are? Okay. You let me know when it starts to get a little too uncomfortable, okay?
My hand's twitching.
Okay, I'll turn it down. All right, Hilary, you want to try? Okay. Okay, feeling about here?
Yeah.
That's it?
Oh, wow. That's like uncomfortable.
Okay, what about now? No? Okay. Let me try again.
Yeah.
Okay, more intense? Okay, all right, turn it back down. Okay, so you're very sensitive in that you feel of level 2 out of 100. Most dogs feel around a 10 to a 15 for the most part. And you're also very sensitive to each incremental level. So you went to a maximum of 5. So you went from 2 to a 5. You felt a 5 and you went up to almost 30. So you felt it actually lower than most people would, but you had a pretty big threshold, right? So you could feel it at a pretty low level, but each incremental was like a step like this big, whereas with you, Hilary, every step was like this big. So why that's important is because we might have one of both with the dogs, right? We might have one, let's say they both feel it pretty low. Let's say with Aggie, it might be, okay, let's say, I'm just saying hypothetically, because we wouldn't know until we try, but we could see that, okay, she's a little bit more like Hilary, feels it really low, and we got to be really kind of cautious about going up in the levels, right? Because we don't want to make it too uncomfortable, right? And then with him, it might be, okay, maybe he feels it a little bit lower, but he's got more of a threshold there, right? So you really don't know until you try, right? But the key is you definitely want to have a tool that's adjustable because a lot of e-collars don't have a lot of adjustability. They have maybe 3, 6, maybe 10 levels. And if you have a dog that's really sensitive, excuse me, to each incremental level, you can imagine going from a level 1 to a level 2 would be catastrophic, which we wouldn't want to do, right? So if, let's say, one of them was really sensitive, we could just take our time, make sure that we're just going up one level at a time, go really, really slow with it, just in case, right? But usually dogs are not as sensitive as people, typically, right? And there's a couple of different reasons for that. Most dogs build they usually have pretty high pain thresholds, typically, and then obviously there's absolutely no fur on your hand, right? So it's going to get a perfect connection every time on your hand, whereas on their neck, a little bit of that fur is gonna kind of get in the way there a little bit, right? So maybe we'll start with Otis. We'll do a little bit of prong collar with him. We'll see how that goes.
Off this wide collar?
You can leave that on right now. We are actually going to use that. I'll just get it set up. I'll probably add maybe one extra link to it. I'll just ballpark it, and then if we have to add or take one out, we can always do that. All right, I'll get you to put it on. So you want to get it up nice and high on his neck, so over the other collar. and then basically just going to go around his neck, and you're going to clip on here, and then you can clip your leash to that, okay? There you go. Hi, friendly.
I think it needs one more.
Yeah?
I mean, yeah, you got him? That is fine.
Buddy boy. Yeah, we could always put another one in. Yeah, I'll put another one in. That's fine.
He goes,
There you go. Try that. All right, I'll take his leash. Yeah, clip it on there for me. Hey, buddy. Yep, perfect. There we go. Thank you. All right. There we go. A little power steering now. Treats. Here you go, buddy. All right, so I'm just going to start to kind of work him through the basics here. So all that I'm going to do is basically just let him kind of hit the end of it in the beginning. I won't really worry about giving him any corrections. I'm just going to let him figure out the boundaries first, and then I'll start to bring in a little bit of correction once he's starting to kind of get the lay of the land. You know, he's a big dog, and a lot of times big dogs, when they come in, they kind of learn that, like, if they pull on the leash, they're probably going to get to where they want to go, right? We obviously don't want that. We want him to learn that pulling on the leash does not get him what he wants. And so this can be a really effective tool, obviously, for being able to do that. Come on, buddy. Good boy. So I'm just going to hold on with one hand so you can see how much less pressure he's putting on the leash. And I'll walk him over towards his buddy there. And as you can see, I'm not having to hold him back like crazy, and I haven't really done a whole lot yet, right? So what we would have to do is probably do a combination of him correcting himself and us correcting him to calm him down. So if we went for a walk, it might not be good enough to just let him hit the end of the leash, because sometimes they'll build up a bit of a threshold, right? Or let's say, they'll just kind of push the envelope a little bit. A lot of times when we're dealing with dogs with reactivity, that just means barking, pulling, stuff like that. A lot of times what happens is they learn that it's not that big of a deal. So right there, I gave a little bit of correction and I said, okay, I want you to focus on me, right? So it's, like I said earlier, it's twofold, right? It's one, you are putting pressure on yourself, and two, I can also put pressure on too, right? Because where that's going to be really important is there's a dog coming down the street, barking, and you're probably going to have to say, don't even think about it, right? So it's just a combination of the dog making their own choices, good boy, nice job, and the client stepping in at times to get a little bit more attention. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of distraction here, just to see how he does. So basically, I just want to see if I can get him to be a little bit more cordial at the door here. Typically, we would do this with e-collar instead. But I would say that just because a door opens, it doesn't mean I want you to go somewhere, right? So if a door opens, I want you to be focusing on me, good boy, and not just running through the door, good boy, very nice, good boy. So as you can see, you did really well with that. And then it transfers over pretty nicely too, right? So Amy, you want to work him a bit? So if I hand him over to Amy, essentially the same thing is going to apply, not because Amy has a relationship with him, just because we're using a tool that's more effective, right? Yeah, it can be really powerful. Where things can start to go awry a little bit is in situations where, like, a lot of people will go to a pet store, buy a prong collar, fit it incorrectly, put in, 3 extra links so they could just pop it over the dog's head, and it becomes super ineffective. You have to have the right amount of links on it, or else it's not very effective. And then a lot of times they feel like, okay, if the dog pulls, that'll self-correct, but they won't do the second step, which is trying to prevent the dog from pulling too. So that's where a lot of people really get fetched up is, well, there's a time and a place where you might want to be like, hey, there's a dog and he's barking at you, pay attention to me. And he might not be pulling on the leash at that point, right? So there's this constant push and pull of how much is the collar going to do the work and how much is our technique going to do the work, right? So if we set you up with the right collar, that's going to get you, let's say, 40% of the way there. And then the technique of it, when to step in, is going to get you the other, let's say, 60%. Hillary, you want to try? Just walk around. Don't be afraid to give him a little bit of a pop if you want him to move with you. You don't have to rip his head off, obviously. He's pretty sensitive to it. Just keep going if he starts jumping on you. He's just excited to be back with Mom. He's doing pretty good. Following along pretty good.
It's never not been taught, the good leash.
Right. Yeah, you got a little bit more power steering now, which is good.
Power steering.
He's definitely excitable. Okay, why don't you have a seat? We'll start a bit with her. All right, Aggie, you're up. Will she be okay with me putting this on her, you think?
She should be.
Yeah.
She's jumpy, but she's bad.
Just jumping. Likes to lick people in the face.
She's very much a people dog.
Yeah.
She
Take that. Thank you.
other dogs.
Okay, so we're going to do essentially the same thing with her. We're not going to use the tone. We're not going to use any commands, anything like that. We basically just want to play the same game with her, where we're going to find a level on her just like we did with you guys. And then what we're going to do is we're going to show her not to pull on the leash with the e-collar. Again, this wouldn't be something that I would typically be doing with e-collar because you have 2 dogs. But if you guys do e-collar training, we're going to have to run her through all the basics and stuff anyways. So I'll just give you a quick little kind of demo on how things work. And we'll go from there. I'm just going to make sure we're nice and tight here. Hi. Hello, friendly. Hello. So I'm just starting at level 1, just like with you guys. And what I'm looking for is, a lot of times when the dog starts to feel it, they'll just kind of look at the ground, like a lot of dogs are. Sometimes they'll look up, just like, did a bug land on my back or something like that? So when I start to notice, I'll let you guys know, and you guys can probably see it at the same time too. Sometimes they just scratch just because there's a new collar on. Usually it's not because of the e-collar. And of course, every dog is different here. So we're already higher than where you had felt it, Hillary. So we're at 7. We're not seeing anything yet. I'd say the average dog is between like a 10 and a 15 typically. Goldens can definitely have a high pain threshold too. I've trained hundreds of them over the years. So we'll see where she's at. She might be just kind of right in the middle, between 10 and 15 maybe. See that right there? Did you notice that? Okay, so that was 11. So let me hit it again, see if she does it again. Right there. See that little?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically the lowest level that she feels, which for her is 11. Okay, so that's over double what you would feel. This is why I like to start them out and see where the dog is at, right? Because she's just normal, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to use it where I'm just going to add a little bit of pressure on the e-collar when she's starting to pull. And what I'll do is I'll actually turn on my speaker here. Come on. So that you guys can hear when I'm pressing the button. What's up there, huh? Yummy treats. Want some cabbage rolls?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go up to 11 again. Start her there. So just like with you guys, I'm just going to add a little bit of pressure on the e-collar when she's pulling and release it when she stops. Or just like we did with him, except with him we were adding a little bit of pressure with the prong collar. Good. So we're still at 11. I haven't jumped up at all yet. A little bit of pressure there. Probably go up a little bit to a 12. I want to see that threshold, see if they're really sensitive. So she's pretty distracted now, so I'm having to go up a little bit. I might go up to a 13. She's got a bit of a threshold. I got to push her through there.
She's definitely stubborn.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I think her strength comes from sheer determination, where he's just soft.
Yeah. Yeah, so she's gone up a little bit. She's at like 14, 15 right now. It's not abnormal to go up a few levels at all. It's very normal. Good girl. So now we got now she's turning a little bit quicker at 15. So that's good. Go to 16. I basically just want her to follow me and not be putting pressure on the leash. That'll take me another probably 60 seconds. But as you can see, it's a lot more demanding to do this on a leash with e-collar. Especially when you got two dogs and you're trying to figure out which level the dog needs to be at and stuff. So that's why we usually will just do the prong collar instead. There we go, moving a little quicker now. Good girl, you're doing good. Seventeen's pretty good. I'm gonna try one more level. Good girl, a little more attention there, which is nice. Good girl. Try 19. I want her just walking with me where she's still choosing to kind of pull over there. Which is not ideal. Good girl. So she's at 20 right now. So she started, ooh, that was a little bit much, huh? We'll turn you down, don't worry. It's okay though.
That reaction.
Yeah, she just caught her off guard. Sometimes what happens is sometimes the e-collar will just kind of like get a real good connection because of the fur there, and then it'll just be a little bit intense. So we typically, we'll talk about getting, getting through that undercoat, which will make that a lot less likely to happen. Good girl. So now we're lower, we're at 9 right now, so she's lowered down. A lot lower. Good girl. That was good. Good girl. That's what we want. There's a good girl. What a good girl. Okay, Dylan, you want to try? So Dylan's going to do the same thing. You know, one of the nice things about when you start adding a little bit of correction, it really has nothing to do with who the person is, right? And so a new person can come in and can work with the dog, but also a client can work with a dog where the dog has been disrespectful to them in the past, right? Where they can go, oh, well, I've learned that I can pull and get away with it. It's really easy and seamless to just transition over to you, which is good, right? And he's doing really good. Like, I thought at least he would want to run over there and say hi to her and stuff, but he's kind of like, okay, this is my safe zone. I don't want to put pressure on the leash, so he's doing good.
He pulled twice and then.
Okay.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, not worth it.
No.
Aggie, I love you, but you're not worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, bring her a little bit closer, and then if you need to, go up, but we'll keep her at, she's at 10, I think, right now. Very good. Nice attention there. Bring her a little bit closer to Otis this time. So she wants to go out. And we'll use the door as a distraction too. That'll be a good one. There we go. Good. Very nice. So she did hit the leash, but she didn't strain on the leash. She didn't say like, no, you can't make me do this. She rebounded really quickly, which is nice. So now we're going to use the door, and he's probably going to have to go up a little bit. So I'd go up maybe 2 levels. What is that ringing? Okay, when she comes back to you, turn her down again. So what she was doing there is she was locking up her muscles, right? It's kind of like if you've ever gone to get a massage and your back is really hurting and you're like this, you're kind of like in self-preservation mode, and then you're like, wait a second, I'm paying for this, why am I doing this? And then you loosen your muscles. So that's why I told them to go down, because sometimes what will happen is they'll lock up like that, and then when they start moving again, they release it, and you don't want to be too high, right? So that usually only happens in the very beginning, but we just want to be cautious, just not to overwhelm her. What level are you on?
14 right now. We're up to about 23, 24.
Okay, yeah, so she started pushing it again there. Okay, cool. Amy, go grab Schooner for me. You can work Big Boy. I'll work her. Thank you. All right, so just leave it open.
Okay.
Come on. So Dylan's going to work. No, he's retired now. He's almost 16. Yeah. He still wants to come out and work, but it's like, dude, you can barely walk. Like, you should probably have a nap. So what we're going to do is Amy's going to grab Schooner, and basically Dylan's going to try to keep him from getting too overexcited, pull on the leash, maybe barking at Schooner, stuff like that. And I'm going to try to do the same thing with her, right? I could do this probably way easier with a prong collar, but I just want to see kind of where she goes at in the levels, because she could very easily go up to 30, 40, 50. A lot of dogs do. She might not, but at the door there she went to 23, right? So I want to kind of see, that'll give us a little bit of, headway. If you guys sign up for training, we'll kind of know moving forward and see what happens.
Go up to like a really high number on the.
Oh yeah, we've had dogs max out the e-collars, yeah.
What type of dog? Or does that even?
It usually is dogs with like really muscular necks. So we see it a lot with pit bulls, American bulldogs, a lot of Rottweilers, especially the male Rottweilers, quite a few German Shepherds. All right, she's coming down now. So yeah, we do see it from time to time. Not every day or anything, but we do see it from time to time. You ready there? All right, you can come in. Good girl. There we go. Good. So she's going up a little bit in level. She's at 24. Not too bad. Good girl. Good girl. There we go. Good girl. You're doing good. She's at 23, so she's not gone up too much. How you doing there, Dylan?
Yeah, good.
Good. Good girl. Over here. Good girl. You're doing super duper. Oh, super duper girl. Good job. Very nice. I wouldn't either. That's why it's effective, right? Yeah. All right, go a little bit closer, push him a bit. Good girl, Aggie. You're doing good. Good boy, Spoon. Give him some treats there, Amy.
Oh, I didn't want to give him too many.
No, you can deal with lots of liver. He's fine.
Yeah.
Hello. How are you? Good girl. Dylan, you want to take the camera and just point it a little bit more towards Schooner, just to the left a little bit? Yeah, that should be good. Perfect. There you go. Okay, we're gonna change it up a little bit. We're gonna get Schooner start moving here a little bit. That's gonna create what we call prey drive. It's just gonna create frustration, excitement, stuff like that. So we're gonna see how much that changes their behavior, right? All right, just get them moving a little bit. Oh, phone's going. Good girl. She didn't even put any pressure on the leash there. Amy, lure him when you walk him around, please. Good girl. Good girl. Little tap there. She came right back to me. That was at 20. So she's actually lower than I thought she would be. All right, you can take him inside. Thanks, Amy. Good girl. You're doing good. Good boy, Spoon. All right, you can give him back there, Dylan. Okay, you get one too. Here you go. There you go. You're welcome. Okay, now when Amy comes back, if he starts barking again, I want you to say no and give him a little pull, okay? And I'll do Aggie if we need to. I think she'll be probably okay, but just keep an eye just in case. Okay, so we'll start going over a quote for you, and I'll give you two options to go home with for just the leash stuff, and then also if you want to do everything. So you guys are going to go home with this sheet. It'll have all the info on there and all your prices and all that kind of stuff, so don't feel like you need to remember all this stuff. So there's it's a lot to remember. So there's two programs I'm going to suggest for you. The first one is the Walk Doctor program. In this program, we're just working on leash walking. So that means not pulling on the leash, not lunging at cars, not barking at other dogs, not pulling you towards, a little dog on the road, not pulling your mom over, etc. It's basically just about getting them to be more harmonious when you take them for a leash walk, right? It's not going to solve all your problems, but sometimes people will come in and they say, hey, we want to start with this, or this is really the most important thing for us. Thank you, Amy. And so, depending on the situation, sometimes people will choose this option, so we'll go through it. So typically what we would do is set you up with 3 private lessons, 1 per week for 3 weeks. And basically you guys come in and we show you guys what to do. If we were doing Walk Doctor, we would set them both up on prong collars, which you guys get as part of your training. We also use we call it a safety. It's just a little rope with 2 clips on the end. And basically we just use that to clip onto the leash onto their extra collar, so that if you're going out and God forbid you put it on incorrectly or something failed or whatever, it's still connected just in case. So it's very rare that would ever be needed, but we always say, hey, you might as well have it on there just in case. So you get all that. So you get your tools included, and then we basically set you up and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We usually start with going through a little bit of theory. So here's what to watch for. Here's where to start to intervene. These are all the things that you want to look for in your dogs, that they're getting a little too overexcited. here's how to step in, all that kind of stuff. So we kind of give you the lay of the land before we go out. And then we start by going out for a walk, right? Because you can't fix it unless you see it. You know, I can show you guys a little bit of what to do in here, but if you don't go for a walk, you're not going to deal with the real world, right? Like Schooner is an easy dog. He's calm, he's under control, he's social, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, that's only going to take you so far, right? So we like our clients to go for a walk, work on, you know, the pulling and the reacting and all that kind of stuff. We give you that for week 1 to go home with. So, okay, just take them home. Do this at home, practice in your own neighborhood, go for walks, and so on. If you want to make it a little bit easier on yourselves, you could definitely start walking them together. I would highly suggest that for at least the first couple of walks until you feel like you're more in control and you can do it on your own. But if you each just have to focus on one, it's definitely a little bit easier in the beginning. Or even, excuse me, even if your mom wanted to come out and help you with it, she's more than welcome to come if she wants to come in for the training as well too. But if she could come out and you could do one and she could do one and so on and so forth, if Josh isn't around or something like that, feel free to do that as well too, right? So we give you that to work on week 1. You should see a pretty significant improvement in week 1, right? As you can see, pretty effective, right? And so now we just need to start, you know, taking that to the next level when you guys are in your own neighborhood. Dogs are usually worse in their own neighborhood, so it takes a little bit of practice, right? Because they're so used to, like, dogs are usually more defensive in their own neighborhood, but 2, they're used to getting away with a little bit of stuff in their own neighborhood, right? Where we come in here and we're just like, hey, cut the crap, it's a little bit different for them, right? Because they're like, okay, I can't get out of control here, and then Amy comes back in and they're like, I got it, I'm not supposed to be a bad dog, right? So it takes a little bit of, you know, tweaking when you guys get home to make sure that things are good. But you know, that we can, I'm sure, help you with. That won't be a problem. So then you come in for your second lesson and we go out for another walk. How are they doing? How's this doing? How's the pulling? How'd it go with the dogs? Okay, if you passed 10 dogs in the last week, how did they go? Were there some dogs that they were more out of control with and dogs that seemed a lot easier? Okay, here's how to finesse things and whatever. You go home, you practice it again, you make some tweaks, right? You're just adjusting along the way. Typically lesson 3, we go for another walk, we do the same thing, and we just kind of take it to the next level. And usually by 3 lessons in, you guys are ready to go into group classes, and you're happy to, you know, you're starting to push the envelope a little bit. So we'll talk a lot about group classes because you get group classes with either of the programs. But we always say, listen, if you get to the last expected lesson, which would typically be the 3rd lesson in this program, and you're not at least 85% of the way there, we just book you in for another lesson. There's no extra cost. You guys just come in and we keep working on it. We can make some tweaks. If things are really, really difficult for you guys at home, we'll come out to your house. We'll help you guys with it there. We don't usually have to, but we always say, listen, people come in, they sit on that couch and they don't ask, like, how much is it for 3 lessons? They don't ask, like, how much is it to get my dog to be good here, right? They go, we have these issues and we want them to be addressed in our own neighborhood or your mom's neighborhood or whatever, and we want to do what we can to get you guys there. It shouldn't be that difficult. We shouldn't have to do anything other than you guys come in for 3 lessons and it transfers over really nicely at home, which it does with the vast majority of dogs. But if you need another lesson or if you need us to come out, we can figure that out. Usually we do that towards the end, right? Because we want to try just, you know, doing our private lessons and see how things go. But our whole thing is like, talk is cheap. If we don't get you guys results, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to refer us to other people, right? So we want to make sure that you guys are happy, and if we need to, we can, you know, cater towards you guys at that point. You know, and sometimes what we'll do is we'll say, okay, the dogs are doing pretty good at home, but hey, maybe you could come out before or after one of the group classes, which are on Saturdays, and we could do a little bit, you know, we could keep a couple of dogs after group class, maybe 3 or 4 dogs, and we could do like a mini group class just to see how they make out and so on and so forth, right? So we're all about doing what we can to get you guys where you need to go. You know, a lot of trainers, they take your money and it's like, if you get to the end of the sessions, it's like, well, you got what you paid for. You paid for lessons, That's not how we look at things. We expect that you guys are paying for results, okay? And so if we need to give you a little bit more time, if we need to tweak things along the way, and so on and so forth, we'll help you guys with that. But it should take us about 3 private lessons here at the shop, going for walks and stuff, and then you guys should be able to progress into group class. So we do group class Saturday at 1 o'clock. We meet at a park called Flynn Park, which is down by the Rotary in Halifax. And our group classes are great because one of the things that we focus on more than anything else is leash walking, being around other dogs, being around other people, being around distractions. And I always say the role of group class is pretty simple. The dog should come out and realize that they're not the center of the world, right? And that doesn't mean that we don't love our dogs. It doesn't mean that we don't give them attention. It doesn't mean that we don't necessarily spoil them. It just means that when you go for a walk, and there's other people and distractions and stuff, it's not for you to go crazy and be barking and making yourself the center of attention. You guys should be the center of attention. What you guys are doing, I'm going this way, you need to follow. I am passing another dog, you need to just chill out, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's really good to get them into group class because obviously you can push them a little bit more, right? Because there's usually, right now we're averaging about 10 dogs per week typically. And so you guys can pop into those things whenever you want, right? So it's not like you have to come every week. And if you miss a week, you're going to be totally clueless, right? It's just a drop-in thing where we pretty much do the same stuff every week, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to go for a pack walk together with all the dogs, right? So that's obviously key. We usually will stop, we'll do some obedience drills, a focus and stuff like that. And then a lot of times, if it's not, blazing hot out or whatever, we'll stop, we'll do a bit of socialization, just to, get the dogs to, have a little bit more control around each other and stuff like that. So we do a little bit of everything, but if you miss a week or two, it's not a big deal. You guys can just pop in as your schedule allows. You can come every week if you want, or you can come, every couple of weeks, or just randomly. You don't have to contact us and tell us you're coming. We just give you all the information on where it is and what time and stuff, and then you guys pop in whenever you guys are available. And you can both come, or you can, one of you can come. If one of you guys is away or working or something like that, you guys could, usually if it's just one person, I usually say, if it's your first week, just start with one dog, and then you could bring the other dog the next week, or if you guys can both come, then, you could bring them both or whatever. But if you both come, I would say, one each, one person per dog kind of a thing, right?
That's good, because I always brought them both, and then the not person to struggle with those.
Well, you might not struggle because we'll be there to help you, but it would typically be easier if you start with one dog, right? And then usually I'd say, okay, let's say you bring Otis for the first week. Okay, we want you to go home and have a pretty good week, right? So have a pretty good group class so that you want to come back. You're like, you know what? It was good. We had Ted and Amy there, and Dylan's usually there. Okay, so we got things under control, we're fine. Okay, next week I'm going to bring Aggie, right? Okay, she did really good. Okay, now maybe I'll think about bringing them both by myself. Or like I said, you could both come and each have one dog, whatever you guys want, right? So for this program, we typically charge about $1,500, usually when we're dealing with a little bit of leash reactivity and stuff. Plus, there's kind of like an extra fee if you want to add another dog. It's not $1,500 times 2 because it's not going to take as much time, right? So usually we would start with like $1,500 for one dog, and then typically we usually put it's usually like $600 to $700 typically if we want to put another dog onto the program. With these guys, I think they'll come along pretty easy, so I'll try to be a little bit more reasonable on the price. But I would say if you wanted to do 2 dogs, which obviously you would want to do, it would be $2,000, and that includes both dogs, okay? Now, there is a more extensive program, which is called the Safe Dog Program, where we're not only going to focus on your leash training issues, but you'd also be focusing on all the other things, right? So barking excessively, all that kind of stuff that you had talked about. We would do boundary training, so you'd be able to keep them in the yard, all that kind of stuff. In this program, you would get the prong collar for the leash walking, but you'd also get an e-collar. A good e-collar is not cheap. They're really expensive to get good e-collars. We pay a small fortune for them, but basically you're purchasing that as part of your training program, okay? They have really good warranties and stuff like that, which is pretty rare that there's any kind of warranty issues because they're really good quality. But if anything ever happens, you can just send it back to the company. Usually they're pretty good with it, where if you tell us there's an issue with it and we try to fix it for you and we can't fix it in here, you just call the company and they just send you one out and you have it in a week, kind of a thing. So in this program, we're not going to need that much more time to accomplish these things. It should take us about 4 private lessons. We just jam-pack the lessons a little bit more, okay? So again, you're going to do your leash walking, but we're going to do some off-leash training with them. We're going to show you how to boundary train them, which just means how to keep them in the yard. Usually we do that towards the end of the training. We're also going to work on, other things that are really important, like getting up on the counters and stealing food, right? What to do when people come over to the house to get them to calm down and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to have much easier to handle dogs, not just on the leash walk, but in all aspects, right? So we're covering a lot more stuff when it comes to this. By the way, when it comes to the walk doctor, I didn't talk about how long the group classes are available. It says you get 3 months of unlimited group class for maintenance, but we don't care how long people come. You can come as long as you want, right? We got lots of clients that pop in once a month for years and years and years, right? We want you guys to be popping in to make sure that everything's going well and stuff like that. For the Safe Dog program, you'll probably need about 4 privates. If you do need more than that, again, there's no extra cost. So if you get to lesson 4, the dogs are doing pretty good, but they're only 60, 70% of the way there, we book you in for another lesson. We keep working on it because, again, results are the most important thing here, right? So in this program, again, you get unlimited group classes. You can bring them out as long as you want to those things. We're going to focus on the on-leash and the off-leash and all the behavioral stuff, so you get basically everything here. You get your e-collars included, so that's a 2-dog mode. That e-collar alone, if you want to buy, is like $800. So they're not cheap, but that's included as part of your training fee. You get unlimited phone and email support with any of our programs, so if you ever have any questions, you go for a walk. I had a client last week email me, say, hey, I went for a walk. They have two huge St. Bernards. And they said, okay, I went for a walk and and Boris, the big male, he did pretty good, but he wanted to, rather than freaking out at the dog that was walking by, he just wanted to stop and just look at it. Is that okay? Sometimes there's these questions that we don't always answer in the lessons, and you can always phone or email us if you have any questions, and we can kind of help you along throughout the week, or we definitely make ourselves available to help you guys with that stuff. Each week, you're going to go home with step-by-step homework. If you do this program, the Safe Dog program, there's a lot more stuff, plus we're doing e-collar, right? So you're going to need really detailed homework to know exactly what you should and should not be doing in that specific week. So it'll be all detailed out there for you. And then again, if there's any specific questions, we can help you guys throughout the week and kind of go from there. So this one, you're getting private lessons, you're getting group classes, but we're doing e-collar and prong collar so that we can just accomplish a lot more stuff. So this program's a little bit more pricey just because it starts a little bit higher, plus your e-collars and stuff like that. So if you wanted to do 2 dogs here, it's $3,500. And then, of course, that includes everything. So it includes your private training, group class, all your tools, taxes included in our programs, all that kind of stuff. So just to go through a few more things, and then if you guys have any questions. So session times revolve around what we have available and what you guys have available. So we don't work on Sundays, but apart from that, Monday through Saturday, we're available, and we work quite a bit. He's getting a little antsy, huh? We're almost done there, big boy. Don't worry. So I wouldn't be your trainer on this one. Amy would be your trainer, okay? So Amy is our behavioral specialist here, and she takes on all of the cases that are for us. I'm not saying for you guys, because I know you guys are, stressed out about, some of their behaviors and stuff. But for us, this is not like a really, really intense situation, right? And I would say, listen, you want Amy to be your trainer because you do not want to get my prices, okay? So Amy is fully capable of working with these guys. She's helped many, many, many dogs in situations like this before. She'll be able to help you guys. But at the end of the day, I always say, listen, it's my business. I live right there. My office is upstairs. I'm in and out of the shop. If you guys need me for anything, Amy can always call me in. I'm pretty much always on the property. Usually I'm helping out with bringing dogs out and, stuff like that anyways. So I'll be around, she'll just be heading it, and then we're always both at group class too. So once you transition into group class, we'll both be around there to help you guys out and stuff like that. Fine print says we do not provide exchanges or refunds of any kind. So what this means is we give our clients 150%. We've got so many people that want to get in for training. We don't want to waste our time with people that aren't going to put in the time, that are just going to be wasting their time and wasting their money, right? We want to make sure that you guys are going to be able to get good results over the long term. And so we want you guys to sign up if you guys decide this is what you guys want to do and you're willing to put in the time. Now, the good news is it's not that much time. It's really not, because a lot of what we do is we just show you guys what to do in situations that you're already finding yourself in. When somebody comes to your door to drop off a package, you already have to do something. When you're going for a walk, you're already investing that half an hour into a walk, right? When you want to let them out in the yard, you're already investing that time. We'll just show you how to do that more harmoniously so that they're more attentive and easier to handle. So it's not that much time. We just want people to trust us, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a big thing for people to do. It's a lot of money. It's a big commitment, and that's why we work with every dog that comes in, so that people can get a sense for what this is like. Some people come in and they go, it's too much money, or we want to try another trainer, or I don't know about the e-collar or the prong collar or whatever. And that's fine. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. You guys might go home and say, hey, I don't know about this. Ted seems like an asshole. I don't think so, right? Or you guys might go home and say, you know what, this makes sense. He knows what he's doing. They're very confident in what they're doing. They've replicated it literally thousands of times. They have a very developed program. You know what I mean? It's not, one of the things a lot of our clients like is that, we can't just do private lessons with you, because it's not going to help you in every environment. We can't just throw you into group classes because you're going to be overwhelmed. So that's why we started with private, and then once you're at about 85 to 90% of the way there, then we put them into group class so that you're not overwhelmed, right? So if you guys decide this is for you, we'll give you 150%, right? But if you guys go home and decide that there's a better option for you guys, don't sign up with us. Go with that option. We're not going to push you to do anything, right? But if you, like I said, if you guys say, hey, this is what we need, we'll give you 150%. We'll make you happy. And we always say, hey, on your last private lesson with us, we're going to blow your minds. You're going to be really happy with things. The dogs are going to be doing really good. We'll just ask you to do a Google review for us. We'll say, hey, pull out your phone, do a quick Google review. We'll show you how to do it, all that kind of stuff. We've been trying to focus on getting more Google reviews because it really helps our business a lot.
That's what I found you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so we got a ton of people from that, and so we just, the last couple of months, we've been asking people. We're up to 82 five-star reviews. So 83. There you go. 83. By the time you leave, 85. Right. So yeah, we'll ask you to do a review, but of course we've got to blow your minds. We've got to make you guys happy. We've got to make sure that you guys are good to go before we ask you for that. But yeah, that's that. So the fine print, again, it's just we will help you. We don't care how long this takes. We don't care if we have to change techniques. We don't have to whatever. If it's more difficult than we initially expect, we're not going to make you pay us more money. We just keep helping you guys until you guys are happy with things, and then we continue to give you that service over the long term, right? We've got lots of young couples that come in, and they're not thinking about kids, whatever. They call us 4 years later and say, hey, I just found out I'm pregnant. What do I do? We get that call all the time. Sorry, I don't mean to scare you, right? But okay, and then people reach out. What do we do? Ted, you're a dad. You have 3 dogs. How did you do it? Oh, thank you for asking. I've got a free online course that you can take to start prepping for that. Okay, and then, we'll talk about it in group class and we'll show you what to do. And so we want to help people over the long term. I always say that dog training is a waste of time and money if it doesn't last over the long term. If we show you and it helps for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, it's still a waste of money, right? And so we want to make sure that you guys are happy, because we do not advertise our business at all. We get clients through Google, for example, and a lot of it is through referrals. So if we make you guys happy and your dogs are doing great a year from now and somebody moves into your neighborhood and says, oh my God, your dogs are so good, you're naturally going to say, hey, if your dog has some issues, go to Ted, go to Amy, right? So we want to make sure that you guys are happy with things, and that's really our thing. Like, when you said, hey, when we asked you in the beginning, what do you want to work on? Notice how I didn't say anything about, oh, I think you should do this. Oh, I think you should do this. Oh, you should definitely do this and this and this and this. I don't give a crap at the end of the day. Your happiness is what's important to me, right? And so the only thing that I suggested was boundary training, just because you mentioned, like, hey, it'd be nice to have the dogs out in the yard, and that will help with that, right? Okay, so we're almost done here, and then if you have any questions. So for payment, taxes included in both of those programs. We do cash, debit, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and email transfer. So pretty much everything. Hell, you want to give me Bitcoin? I'll take it. You don't have to pay it in full. Some people do, but some people pay it in two payments. So you can do half on the first lesson, half 30 days later. Usually you're at the point where you're transitioning into group class at that point, if you want to break up the payments a little bit. And then the final thing is, I would suggest, and it's written down here for you, it says, some dogs with thick double coats, which they both have, can need a thorough de-shedding around the neck area before starting training so that the e-collar has a good consistent connection. If this applies to you, which it does for both dogs, we use a de-shedding tool called a Furminator. You can, it's not a simple comb. It's specifically designed to get rid of the undercoat. You can buy them at any pet store. They're about $40-50. So I would, if you don't have one, I would highly suggest getting one, and make sure you go through both of their necks at least 2 or 3 times. You don't have to do the whole body if you don't want to. Just go through the necks to try to get through, especially with him. It'll just make things a little bit more consistent. We could get away with her. It shouldn't be that big of a thing. But usually with Bernese, it's...
Yeah, we do have a Furminator.
Oh, you do?
He gets off a lot.
Yes. So just go through the neck area, like underneath and the sides. You don't have to worry about the back because we don't put the e-collar there. But anywhere around here is good. And you could do the same thing for her just to make it that much easier. Do you have any questions?
This is my second item. You?
The full program you were talking about, that includes walking?
Of course, yep.
It's like,
Walking, off leash, all the behavioral stuff, boundary training, everything. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 business cards. This orange one here is mine. You can phone or email anytime. We don't text message because we try to keep it to phone or email, but phone or email anytime if you have any questions about the program or anything like that. You can always reach me. I'm easy to get a hold of. This one here is Amy's. So if you guys decided that you guys wanted to start training, you're just going to send her an email and say, hey, we want to start training. This is the program that we want. So that would be either the Walk Doctor or the Safe Dog, just so we know what tools we need to have in stock for them. And just say, hey, we want to get started. Here's some dates and times that we have in the next week or 2. And this is the program that you want. And just phone or email her and she'll get you booked in the schedule. Okay? All right. I'll give you this. And you have an e-collar on, which I'll take off.
Yeah, you can take off this thing too.
Good girl. Okay. I'll leave you with those. And if you have any questions, just give us a holler. You're welcome. Thanks for coming in, guys. It's nice to meet you.
They can be good walkers.
Oh, they can. Of course. Crazy. I like her size. She's not too big. Some of the Goldens are just massive, yeah.
There's a kid in a park who has like a 6-month-old. He was like, my dog's bigger than yours.
Yeah, 6 months old. Wow. Yeah, we just say that because sometimes, like, we'll have a dog peeing here every once in a while, every, like, 4 months, and then they just go right to where the pee was, and they usually will pee too, right, because they smell it. Like, he's smelling right here, and a couple of dogs have peed right in this area, and then they just go right to it, and they're like, oh, other dogs have done it, so I guess this is the fire hydrant, right?
all right, well, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
All right.
We should have kept the phone collar on. There's a distraction. We're not allowed to have it.
Yeah. Yeah, Doug peed there yesterday, so you can pee on it. You can pee on it if you want, buddy.
Okay, come on.
Okay, take it easy.